Well, as Steve said, we'll be in John chapter 11. If you need a Bible this morning, go to that welcome page with the QR code. There's a link to a Bible right on that page through our church app. You can also follow along today with notes. I have a scenario for you this morning. It's a what-if scenario. What if you and your family took the most amazing trip to Florida? You spent the week in Siesta Key, which I haven't been to a ton of places, but it's the best sand that I have ever been on. It was the most incredible week with your family, a break, a rest, and fun. You decided on your way home that you were going to make the drive back to Michigan all in one shot, leaving at 6 in the morning. So you leave and everything's going great and smoothly until you cross the border in Tennessee and get around a city and a town called Chattanooga. And this light on your car comes on, a light that you've actually never even seen before, not only in your car, but a light you've never seen on before. And your wife Googles this symbol and says you actually immediately have to pull over. If you haven't caught on, this is my scenario. And since it was my scenario, my original thought, because I have Hondas, I've had some old Honda Civics and Accords, when a light comes on, you got at least a month to see if the car is going to fix itself first. That's my go-to. But the internet said, pull off the road, and so we pull off the road. And the first stop sign we get to off the highway, the car turns off. And then you find yourself in Chattanooga, Tennessee at about 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, and you spend another 4.5 hours there in a tow shop that actually took great care of us. But there we were as a family of 5. The vocabulary of my 3 boys expanded greatly in those 4 hours. We probably smoked a full pack of smoke by secondhand smoke. And here we are, them telling us we don't have the part, nobody has the part, you're going to have to stay in the Red Roof Inn until tomorrow. I'm wondering how you would react, how you would respond. My question for you this morning is what are you like when things don't go as planned? I don't want to tell you what I was like in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I just want to ask you this morning, hey, what would you be like if things didn't go as planned? See, I would propose to you that we often react or respond. There was plenty of reactions as I stood in their parking lot, wondering what we were going to do that night. There was plenty of reactions. But if I took a moment to think, my response would have been different. My response would have been different because we pulled over right away and didn't get stopped on a highway. We were actually 2 blocks away from a mechanic who is open late on Fridays and who spent time with us until 8 p.m. to get our car fixed so we could get back on the road. Technically, a reaction is a response, but I would propose to you this morning that there is a difference between reacting to something and responding to something. A reaction, it's a reflex, it's our gut, it's our instincts. It often happens in the moment. It's quick and tense. You know, oftentimes even in our conversations in the office, when we're coming up with ideas, the phrase is, what's your knee jerk? Because we want to know the response without thinking. A response is different. It's not void of emotion by any means, but there is thought. There is consideration. You look at all the alternatives. See, a reaction can be positive, but a response has purpose. I know the question that I'm asking doesn't necessarily have all the intensity that I want it to have this morning. What are you like when things don't go as planned? That question can resonate heavier with us this morning because I know some of you, it's not just that things haven't gone as planned in your life, it's that things have been horrific. Things have gone horrifically wrong in your story, in your narrative, in your walk here on earth, and your walk with Jesus. Things haven't gone as planned, and it has been devastating. But what is your reaction? What is your response for someone who has a relationship with the Lord? I can tell you my life hasn't always gone as planned. Anytime in my adult life that I've actually made a plan, the Lord has blown it up. Ellie and I were married out of college. We went to Virginia. My parents taught in a school for over 30 plus years, and so this was going to be long term, but we were only in Virginia for a year. We thought we'd go back to New York, where I was from, settle in. We were there for 6 months. We moved out to Michigan, thought we would settle real quickly, moved into my in-laws' basement, thought it was just going to be for a short time, and then the economy crashes, and it wasn't a short time. It was a dark season in life. I didn't plan on losing my father, what will be almost now 11 years ago. I could have probably planned for this, but I didn't plan on 8 concussions actually having a significant impact on my health and having a serious health trial through a season. Our family didn't plan on December 2017 of having our house burn down and losing 90% of everything that we have owned. What's your story this morning? What hasn't gone as planned? You see, we've been in this series called The Jesus Effect. It's the Jesus effect. And my mind this week just simply went to cause and effect. A cause and effect. I'm not a scientist, and this is a very simplistic picture, but my mind went to this like 1990s desk toy. That's when it was popular. It serves really no purpose other than to look at. But it's called Newton's Cradle. I can't teach you about the energy and the momentum. I won't go there. But we have a simple picture of cause and effect. In the title, Jesus Effect, where we're saying Jesus is the cause and there is an effect. We've defined the Jesus effect as the Jesus effect causes us to believe the unbelievable. You see, Jesus is a force. And when the force hits something, there is a reaction or there is a response. Can I interpret it this way for us this morning? Jesus is the cause. A cause is responsible for something. It's the reason for something, and the effect is only existent. The effect only happens because of the cause. So if the Jesus effect causes us to believe the unbelievable, I would say the force of Jesus causes us to realize that he is unbelievable. And as the ball on Newton's cradle is sent away, we react. We react to the unbelievable. But as the force draws it back to himself, we then realize as followers of Jesus Christ that we believe the unbelievable. Whether you're a believer or an unbeliever, the force of Jesus is something you still have to respond to. See, the unbeliever, they'll continue to respond. They'll run away, but time and time again in their life, they're going to have to decide what they're going to do with Jesus. For the believer, can we interpret it this way? We're meant to live a sent life. So the force of Jesus sends us out to live for him and his glory, but then that's our reaction, but our response is to then continually, yes, live a sent life, but then press back into him every time. There's a cause and there's effect. If the Jesus effect is evident in our life, then we must be completely dependent on Jesus, who is the cause. We've been walking through the book of John in this series, The Jesus Effect. See, the whole purpose of the book of John, as he writes, is cause and effect. We started in John 20:31, which says, "These things are all written." John writes this whole book so that you might believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. The book of John, the cause, is written for the effect of belief in our life. This morning we're in John chapter 11. John chapter 11, and it's a story of Mary, Martha, and their brother Lazarus, who is raised from the dead. We're originally introduced to Mary and Martha in Luke 10. Luke 10, as really it's a short story where Jesus finds rest in the home of Mary and Martha. And Martha is serving, and Mary is at the feet of Jesus. And Martha is really scolded and corrected by Jesus because she's distracted. She's angry at Mary for sitting at Jesus' feet when there's a ton of work to do. And Jesus talks to Martha and says, listen, Mary is putting first things first. She's putting the importance of me first. See, when I grew up, it was always the question, are you a Mary or a Martha? And I don't know that I necessarily understand the question, because apparently according to Luke 10, if you're a Martha, then you don't care about Jesus and all you want to do is work. Or if you're a Mary, you don't want to do any work. You just want to sit at the feet of Jesus. And so they have this reputation, but more importantly, their reputation is their home was a safe place for Jesus in his life and ministry to find rest. Here's my aim this morning as we look to John chapter 11. I just want to walk through the book of John with you this morning. Let the word speak for itself, but also to engage with the word as we read through it. And then I just have two observations that I believe that we can learn and apply to our lives from John chapter 11. So you can begin with me. John chapter 11, verse 1 says this. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. It was Mary who anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent to him, saying, Lord, he whom you love is ill. But when Jesus heard it, he said, this illness does not lead to death. It is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. See, Mary and Martha had a plan. It's interesting that Jesus at this time is actually probably a 4 days journey from Mary and Martha's house. But Mary and Martha send a message to him. They don't even ask Jesus to come. They know their relationship with him. All we have to do is tell him that Lazarus is sick and he will come. That was their plan. And Jesus hears this. It's not an illness that leads to death. He's with his disciples. His disciples would be probably concerned if they knew the nature of the illness and why Jesus is going to wait 2 days. But why did Jesus wait 2 days? There's a phrase here in John 11 that is very similar to John 9. If you were to look back a couple chapters, the disciples are coming into town in John 9, and they see a man that's been blind from birth. And the disciples is it his sin or his parents' sin? And God says, no, it's neither. See, that it's that the works of God might be displayed in him, and Jesus heals a blind man in John 9. He has a similar plan here in John 11. Lazarus is ill, but this is for the glory of God, so that the Son of God may be glorified through it. But is Jesus' timing inconsistent here with his love? It's said more than one time. Mary and Martha and Lazarus, it's a family that Jesus loves. But then why isn't he going right away? Why is he waiting 2 days? He's making Mary and Martha wait for his arrival. You can't read into the text that Mary and Martha knew that he waited. But what if they did know? How do you think Mary and Martha would feel if they knew Jesus, who had the power to heal their brother, waited 2 days? How do you feel when you have to wait? What's your reaction or response with the Lord when he makes you wait? Here he's making Mary and Martha wait, but he has already clearly stated is that this illness will not lead to death. It's for the glory of God. God's going to be glorified through this. See, oftentimes our feelings are great liars, aren't they? Our feelings are great liars. Because if Mary and Martha knew that Jesus waited 2 days, their feelings may have changed. Their reaction and their responses probably would change. Does this mean that at times when God makes you wait, or he's withholding something from you, that is actually still for his glory? The truth of the matter is that Jesus is 4 days away. Lazarus dies in a 2 days journey, so even if Jesus left right away, Lazarus would still be dead. But Jesus begins his trek back to Bethany to see this family. You can observe in John 11, 7 through 10, that Jesus actually has even a purpose. See, every step towards Bethany, every step that Jesus takes back to Mary and Martha and Lazarus' house is actually another step nearer to the cross. He has purpose, not just to glorify the Father by raising Lazarus from the dead, but through his own death and resurrection. And so Jesus is on his way with purpose, but every step he is taking is also a step to the cross. Pick up with me. In John 11:14, it says Lazarus has died. You can get a kick out of the disciples not fully understanding Jesus' language, which we can understand ourselves. Oftentimes we probably hold the disciples in a different light because of what they don't understand, but maybe we could take a look in the mirror. How often do we not understand? So Jesus speaks plainly to his disciples in 11:14. Lazarus has died, and for your sake I am glad that I was not there so that you may believe. Jesus is saying he's not glad for Mary and Martha's sake that Lazarus died. It's for the disciples' sake. See, their faith is going to grow deeper by witnessing another miracle of what Jesus is going to do. See, they're glad, he's glad that it will grow their faith. Can you be glad if the waiting in your life, if God withholding something in your life is actually going to deepen your faith? What if your narrative doesn't end in a resurrection? What if your narrative, like Mary and Martha's does, is opposite, and you don't get to witness the resurrection of Lazarus? Is God being glorified through it? Is it still enough for you? Is it still enough for you, even on this side of heaven, you don't experience that resurrection, that rescue from that trial, that pain, that suffering? Is the fact that God can use your pain, your trial, and your suffering for his glory enough for you to endure? See, I don't know if it's always been enough for me. Let me rephrase that. I know that the waiting, the withholding, the trials, and the suffering and pain, it has not always been enough just to know that it can be used for God's glory. His force has caused a reaction where I'm not living the sent life. I'm not coming back and being pressed into him. His force is actually sending me away to actually run away, and again, run away, and again, run away from the Lord. It creates chaos. It creates a chaos. God, I don't agree that you've allowed this. God, I can't do it your way. It's too hard. God, this is all questioning your goodness. You said you were good. See, your timing doesn't work for me, God. And so we come up again and again and again against the force of who God is and who he says he is. And we look at times at our life and we don't see who God is and him doing what he says he will do because we have to wait or he's withholding. And so now we question whether it can be for his glory at all. We start to fight for our own glory. We're going to continue. Verse 17. Jesus arrives in Bethany. Now when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, and many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to console them concerning their brother. So when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, but Mary remained seated in the house. You see a little bit of a role reversal for Mary and Martha. Luke 10, Mary's at the feet of Jesus. This time it's Martha running to Jesus. Martha said to Jesus in verse 21, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." And Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Whoever believes in me, though he die, yet shall he live. And everyone who lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is coming into the world." There's some belief here from Martha, but there's also some help that Martha's belief needs. See, Jesus is talking about right here, right now. He's telling Martha, I'm the resurrection and the life. We'll look down in verse 39. They come to the tomb, and Martha's like, "Don't go in there, Jesus. It's going to stink. He's been in there for 4 days." See, Martha still doesn't understand that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Yes, there is a future reality to that. It's our hope. It's our hope to come. But Jesus is trying to get Martha to see, I'm the resurrection and the life now, right now. Whatever you're facing this morning, Jesus is the resurrection and the life right now. I wonder if it's possible for us to move from the abstract this morning to the personal in our belief when we hear that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Martha goes to Mary in verse 28. "The teacher is here and is calling for you." Mary rose quickly and went to him. Verse 32, "Now when Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she fell at his feet, saying to him, 'Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.' When Jesus saw her weeping and the Jews who had come with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in his spirit and greatly troubled." Jesus wept. Verse 36, "So the Jews said, 'See how he loved him. Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man also have kept this man from dying?'" In verse 38, Jesus is deeply moved again. He came to the tomb. It was a cave and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, by this time there will be an odor, for he has been dead 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" After Jesus prays, in verse 43, Jesus cries out with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out!" The man who had died came out, his hands and feet bound with linen strips, and his face wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him and let him go." This was for the glory of God. You see, if you continue to read through chapter 11 and into John chapter 12, that many believe in Jesus. The religious leaders are coming up with more plans for Jesus to die. Not only Jesus to die, but Lazarus to die, because many more are coming to know Jesus as the resurrection and the life. They've witnessed it. They still don't know what's going to come in days through Jesus, but right here they have witnessed the unbelievable. I think there's 2 things as we walk through John chapter 11 that we can learn and apply to our life. The first is this: a purely emotive reaction lacks gospel perspective. A purely emotive reaction lacks gospel perspective. Look at the 2 reactions or responses from both Martha and Mary. "If you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died." Reading that initially, there's belief. They have a relationship with Jesus. They know that what he can do. But the more and more I have lived with this text and continued to read that, I ask the question, is there also blame? Is there also some blame? If you would have been there, if you would have been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Yes, there's belief, but why weren't you here, God? Where were you when I needed you? Is it often that our belief actually leads to us blaming the Lord and we miss it? We miss the perspective. We can't see what God is doing behind the scenes. We can't see how he is working. We can't see that his hand has been completely in it the whole time, working through it, that he'll get all the glory and that many more will believe. See, a purely emotive reaction lacks gospel perspective. You see, God's going to get all the glory. He always will get all the glory. The question is, will you be one to testify to it as well? Will you testify all the glory to Jesus? See, over and over again, what Jesus wants Martha to see is that he's the resurrection and the life. The key question of the text is in verse 26. Do you believe this? Is it going to be belief this morning in whatever you are facing? Or is the danger right now in your life that your belief in Jesus and what he is withholding or making you wait on is actually turning into blame? See, in that response, in that reaction, we lack a gospel perspective. But can I point out one more thing from this text this morning? And it's this. It's that an empathetic response exhibits gospel belief. We continue to contrast a reaction and a response, a knee-jerk and thought. A response that has purpose. Again, I want to say that an empathetic response, a response versus a reaction, is not void of emotion. It's not void of your emotions, but it's not wasting your emotions. See, empathy is the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. The picture of empathy in John chapter 11 doesn't come from Mary or Martha, it comes from Jesus. I think so many times we minimize the humanity of Jesus. Fully God and fully man, yet we minimize his humanity. Think of Jesus as he comes to a family that he loves deeply. And someone who he loves deeply is dead and in a grave. Think of the two reactions from Mary and Martha versus the two reactions of Jesus when he is deeply moved in verse 33 and 38. The text there actually paints a picture that Jesus makes an audible gasp. He's grieving. He's hurting. He's actually angry at death. See, it's his humanity where we see the empathy of Jesus. He knows in just days from now, he's going to be in Lazarus' shoes. His family is going to be in Mary and Martha's shoes. So what does this empathy look like? Empathy looks like 5 things. Jesus was there. That's the first step of empathy, is that you are there. Jesus also listened. He didn't have to speak a word. He heard the grief of Mary and Martha, even if it was blame. He heard it. He received it all. He was there and he listened. But when Jesus spoke, this is empathy. He spoke hope. He spoke hope. But then Jesus enters their grief. I don't believe, and as I read, I don't believe he's grieving over Lazarus. He knows what's going to happen in mere moments. He's grieving with Mary and Martha. You see, Jesus is not only physically present, but he is mentally and emotionally present. And how does Jesus show it? Jesus, our God, our Lord and Savior, he weeps. He weeps with those who weep. He weeps with you when you weep. See, the picture here is to shift in our lives, in the trials, in the suffering, in the pain, from just merely reacting to responding with purpose for the glory of Jesus. And the application is really to take John 11 and to respond in our day-to-day with empathy. Gospel takeaway this morning. I want you to know this, that empathy is an identifier of the Jesus effect on your life. It's the identifier of the Jesus effect on your life. Here's what it looks like in your life. You need to be there for others. You need to listen. We don't always have words of hope. And so, but if we do speak in those situations, would we speak hope? But would we enter others' grief? Would we enter the grief of each other? And would we weep with those who weep? You see, empathy is, yes, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, but it's also the capacity to place oneself in another's position. So in your life, with what you're facing, do you have the awareness of what others are going through? Some that are walking through the exact same thing that you are walking through, that you can enter their grief with. See, through empathy, Jesus will be identified in us. And it's through empathy that we'll be able to point the world to Jesus. See, we can't be a part of ending or being a part of relieving a friend's grief without first entering into the grief with them. We have to enter the grief with them. I know many in our body have faced grief over the last year or two. Would we enter it with you? Would we be present in each other's grief, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally? The best description of grief that I really love to hold on to is like standing in the ocean with your back to the waves. You never know when the wave's going to hit, and you never know which one's going to knock you over. Maybe you're experiencing that kind of grief. I pray that we as Redemption Church would be a body that are entering each other's grief and know this, the difference between your sympathy and your empathy is your distance. So my question for you this morning is, who can you point to Jesus with your empathy? With a purposeful response in your life, who can you point to Jesus? There's another effect, cause and effect, called the butterfly effect. Yeah, there was a movie, and certainly the theory of the butterfly effect doesn't hold much weight. But it's this, that the wings of a butterfly flapping in, say, the Sahara Desert could cause eventually a tornado in the state of Texas. It's that this small-scale event will ultimately have a large-scale event impact. It's not a really great theory in science, but I think it's a great theory to display the gospel. It's your empathy. It's the small-scale event of your empathy that's going to have an impact on the world around us. What if it's through our empathy that we actually get to witness more resurrections? Would we walk in the feet of Jesus this week? I think the beauty of the Mary and Martha and Lazarus story is that you find them back in John chapter 11, Martha serving, Mary at Jesus' feet. It's in Lazarus' house. He's just chilling out with Jesus as well. They return back to the feet of Jesus because in all their circumstance, their why was answered. Their reason was answered, and it was for Jesus. And it's going to be for his glory until they're forever in his glory. Not a single word from Lazarus is spoken. Think about what he walked through. He was sick. He died. He wasn't asleep. He actually died. He was in the presence of the Lord. Listen, no one who's gone to heaven is going to choose to come back. But I imagine what that conversation is like. I'm not done with you, Lazarus. I'm going to use you for my glory. You're going to rise from the dead. He was sick to dead, to in the conscious presence of the Lord, and then back here on earth, told to take off your grave clothes. See, in John 11, Jesus is in the shadow of his own cross. The story of Lazarus is a foreshadow of what's to come. The greater Lazarus is Jesus, but it's also our foreshadow in the story of Lazarus. You see, I hope you know this morning, and that you can move from the abstract to the personal, that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. Jesus confronts death, and Jesus defeats death. The resurrection and the life is this, that it's death to life, and then it's life to life. You see, with Jesus, every death is now a resurrection. Many will observe this story and make the comparison that Jesus rose from the dead and left his grave clothes behind. But Lazarus was still wearing his grave clothes when he came out because he still needed them. Can I propose to you this morning? You don't need your grave clothes anymore. Can I encourage you this morning? Take off your grave clothes. They're no longer meant for you. They're no longer meant for you. Think about Lazarus. Dead people can't hear. So Lazarus come out may have been more for the crowd that was going to witness his resurrection. But Lazarus comes out. His feet weren't bound, so he could be standing there. But think, others had to unbind them. He had to be unwrapped. He had to take off his grave clothes. Listen, he had experienced death, but he no longer needed his grave clothes anymore. Can I propose to you and understand that in life, things don't always go as planned. They can be catastrophic for you, devastating. And I know at times in this life, we'll wear our grave clothes to cover our wounds, but you're no longer meant for your grave clothes anymore. Maybe it's the death of sin that you're experiencing this morning. We've already walked through it in the book of John. Can I introduce you to the resurrection and the life? Jesus doesn't condemn you. Take off your grave clothes. Go and sin no more. Maybe it's the death of addiction that an addiction has on your life. Can I introduce you to Jesus, the resurrection? Take off your grave clothes. They're no longer meant for you anymore. Maybe you experienced abuse in your life. It's almost been the death of your identity. You want to know who else Jesus greatly loves? It's you. Those grave clothes you're wearing, they're no longer meant for you. Maybe it's depression and anxiety. You've actually been experiencing the death of your spirit. The hope is in Jesus. And he wants you to know that you can take off your grave clothes. They're no longer meant for you anymore. Maybe it's the death of a relationship. You're loved by Jesus. Would you take off those grave clothes? Again, I know those grave clothes in this life cover our wounds. And there's times when we need each other because we're coming out of the grave with our feet tied and we're gonna fall. We're gonna stumble. We can't walk because of our wounds. And sometimes we need others. That's each other to come alongside one another to start to unwrap the grave clothes with our empathy. I know we have wounds, but no matter what you're facing in this life, would you, like Lazarus, when his feet have been unbound And on days when those grave clothes had loosened and his hands were free to take down those last strips, would you be able to see what Lazarus must have seen first? The face of Jesus, your Savior, who loves you. Heavenly Father, life hasn't gone as planned for anybody in this room. But God, can we believe this morning that you are good? That you are the greater Lazarus? That you defeated death? And that we can believe what is true in a relationship with you? That we're no longer meant for our grave clothes. And it's because you're the resurrection and the life. So in turn, would our lives be for your glory until one day our resurrection means we're forever in your glory.